Hey there folks, John here for Biddy Kong's Quest, and last week's video on the Bugs Bunny birthday blowout got me thinking about all of the licensed games on the NES, and for good reason. There are an absolute ton of these games on the NES. Now some of them are good, some of them are bad, and you guys probably know a lot of them, like the Capcom games like DuckTales. Konami did Ninja Turtles. It's one of those things where everybody that grew up with the NES, or maybe even is discovering the console after the fact, has had some contact with some licensed title somewhere along the line. And today, I wanted to go over some of my favorites. Now, to set some ground rules, we are going to avoid some of the more popular ones. Again, I have DuckTales right here. I mentioned that before. I have Ninja Turtles right here. I mentioned that before. This is the first one. We're going to stay away from these because I feel like they've been talked about over and over and over again in, tons of articles and YouTube videos and everything else. So I'm going to rapid fire through some of my absolute favorite NES titles, and who knows, maybe you'll see something that you've never heard of and want to try later. Now we're going to start out with a couple of games from a company that was one of the heaviest hitters when it comes to licensed NES titles. And the first of those is something that I've talked about on this channel numerous times before, so that's why I'm doing it first. I just want to get it out of the way, but I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to mention Little Nemo, the Dream Master. Now, if you've never played Little Nemo the Dream Master, this is based on the movie from the late 80s that actually is itself an adaptation of a comic from over 100 years ago. And in this one, it's a Capcom platformer, and that's something that you're probably relatively familiar with, but the mechanics are a little bit more interesting and a little bit more varied than a lot of their other licensed titles. For instance, your main attack for most of the game actually doesn't cause any damage. You feed candy to animals to enable transformations that give Nemo all kinds of abilities. So it's a pretty varied game. Now, I'm not going to tell you that this isn't a difficult one. This is actually probably one of the more difficult games that Capcom made on the NES, but it is absolutely worth your time. The graphics are fantastic, the music is fantastic. It's one of those ones that's just very unique, and you really won't find another one quite like it on the console's library. So it's absolutely worth checking out. Now there's one other Capcom licensed game that I want to bring up, and to be honest, I could probably mention any of that catalog here. Another one that is never talked about is The Little Mermaid, which freaking fantastic game. Like, if you've never played that game, it's super easy. I think it might have been one of the very first games on the NES that I actually beat as a kid, but it's a fantastic, it's not really platformer because you're swimming around the whole time, but it's a fantastic game from start to finish. So honorable mention to The Little Mermaid. If you haven't played it, play that one. But the one that I want to talk about right now is Darkwing Duck. And if you've never played Darkwing Duck, this one is very similar to maybe like a Mega Man game with a little bit of Bionic Commando kind of DNA. You can walk around and you can hang on ledges, and it kind of plays like a Mega Man game. If you've ever played Kabuki Quantum Fighter, that's another one that's very similar to this, but again, this has that Disney flair to it, and it's actually a really, really, really fun game. It does take a little bit of practice. The difficulty is, again, a little bit higher than a lot of other Capcom games like Rescue Rangers or DuckTales, but I think it's totally worth it in the end, and it is very kind of Mega Man-like, because you go in and you can pick your level that you do, and then you have a gun that you shoot, and you can change different weapons, and they're good for different situations and those sorts of things. The graphics are fantastic, the music is really, really good. Again, this is a Capcom licensed game. I don't think that any of these things are a surprise, but it's absolutely worth checking out if you've not seen it. This one does go for a little bit more than like Rescue Rangers or DuckTales, but because of that, I think less people have tried it, and I think that's kind of a shame, because this is a really, really good game. You should totally check it out. Now, the next one that I want to bring up is from another heavy hitter company on the NES, and that is Monster in My Pocket from Konami. And again, Konami is a huge name in the NES's library, even in licensed games. Again, we talked about Ninja Turtles before. Konami did Ninja Turtles. It's one of those things where they did a lot of games, but sometimes some of the stuff they did flew under the radar. This is one of them, and if you've never heard of Monster in My Pocket, this is a really great kind of just arcade. I wouldn't call it a run and gun because there's no gun, but it's kind of one of those ones where you just kind of go and you just keep on going and punching enemies and everything. It's really creative. The music is fantastic. The sprite work is really, really good. You can pick from two characters at the beginning of the game. They're both pretty much the same. I don't think there's any real difference between the two, but I highly recommend this game. It's really, really, really fun. I think this the price is kind of getting up there for this one, but you know how to play these things if you know, it's one of those things where you can't buy it. And this is one of my absolute favorite games, and I think the very first time I heard about this game was actually from Jesse from Retro Revelations, who's one of the first people I ever met through this YouTube thing. And you know, thanks to Jesse, because this is one of my absolute favorite games. Now I love speedrunning this game, and it just feels really good. The physics feel really good. I really recommend this one because, again, not a lot of people have heard of it, and I think that more people should play it. So Monster in My Pocket from Konami, check it out. Next, I'm going to talk about a game from Sunsoft, and you know, you've probably heard of Sunsoft if you've been around the NES scene for very long. Blaster Master is probably their most well-known one on that console, but they made a ton of games over the course of the NES's life cycle, and it's one of those ones where the sound of the music is just very iconic, like it's very them, and you can't really mistake it. As far as licensed titles go, they didn't do an absolute ton of licensed titles. They did a few, but I think one of the ones that is probably one of my favorite ones, and it's surprisingly cheap, is Batman. And if you've never played Batman, this is like a $10 game, and it absolutely should not be. It should be worth a lot more. It's very similar to what I was talking about with Darkwing Duck. There's, you know, some platforming elements, there's some like wall climbing elements. It's kind of Ninja Gaiden-ish, I would say, more than Mega Man-ish. But the music is absolutely fantastic in it. The graphics are pretty good, and it's just, it kind of plays really, really well. It flows really, really well. It does get pretty challenging a little bit later on, so it's one of those ones where if you want to get good at it, if you want to beat it, you're gonna have to practice a little bit, but it's totally worth it because it's a lot of fun. Like, it's a very, very fun game, and you know, it's one of those things where this is one of those ones that I recommend everybody get to start their NES collection. So if you're getting an NES collection going, you know, it can be really, really, really expensive. This is not an expensive game. You can pick this up at conventions for $10 all day long. You know, 15 maybe, but I bet you could talk them down to 10. It's a pretty common game and absolutely worth picking up. So if you've never tried Batman for the NES, this is one of the best starter games you can get, and it's an absolutely great time. So check it out. Now, next I'm going to talk about a specific category of games, and that's games that were based on licenses that were in syndication. If you don't know what that means, that basically means that these are shows that were not on primetime TV. These are ones that were from years and years and years prior, that were just continuing to be licensed so that they could show them, you know, during the daytime or whatever. If you were a fan of Cartoon Network when it first came out, if you know what that was, Cartoon Network didn't have hardly anything original when they first came out. It was all syndicated stuff, like Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo and a lot of the Hanna-Barbera things. So there was this resurgence of interest in these properties that really hadn't been interesting to people for you know, quite a long time, because they started syndicating these shows, and as a result, I grew up with these shows that my parents also grew up. Again, Scooby-Doo, the Flintstones, the Jetsons. Another one was Felix the Cat. And if you've never played Felix the Cat, this was made by Hudson Soft. They made a ton of games on the NES, but one of the big ones is Adventure Island. And if you've seen my intro video, if you've seen any of my channel branding, all of my stuff is based on Adventure Island because I am an absolutely huge fan of Adventure Island. I absolutely love that series. Hudson Soft made that series. They also made Felix the Cat. And I gotta say, this is one of the most polished NES platformers that you're ever gonna play. The personality is off the charts with this thing. The graphics are phenomenal. The music is really, really good. The colors just absolutely pop off the screen. It's an absolutely fantastic game, and one of those ones that I think that people either forget existed or just never knew existed in the first place. And again, it's based off of an old cartoon that likely at the time, and there's not that many people that probably watched it on like primetime TV or anything. This would have been something that people grew up with because it was in syndication, and it was just one of those things you watched while you waited for the next thing to come on. That said, there were a ton of games like that for the NES, and most of them were really stinking good. So Felix the Cat is absolutely worth your time. It's a really fantastic game with amazing mechanics, great graphics, great music, and totally worth checking out. Speaking of older titles that were in syndication, Hanna-Barbera's catalog was a huge target for companies looking to license properties to make video games on back in the late 80s and early 90s. Now, a lot of people think of Hanna-Barbera and they think of, oh, the Flintstones. Everybody knows Flintstones Surprise at Dinosaur Peak. It's one of the most rare NES games that, it pretty much exists. People aren't even really sure if it was ever for sale at retail. Some people think it was only a Blockbuster exclusive. There's lots of interesting history that goes into that. There was also another Flintstones game, The Rescue of Dino and Hoppy, which actually I grew up with. I love that game. Fantastic platformer, and really, really underappreciated. But the other one that a lot of people don't really even seem to know about, that's kind of goes hand in hand with the Flintstones, is the Jetsons, Cogswell's Caper. Now, this is one that I feel like flies under the radar a lot for people, and maybe there's a good reason for that. The Flintstones, again, got a lot more notoriety because of that really, really expensive game, and by the way, this game is not cheap either. But I don't know if it just came out at the wrong time or what, but nobody really seems to realize that this game exists. It's a really, really great platformer. The physics are really good. It kind of has the pick up and throw boxes mechanic, kind of like Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. It's got a sub-weapon system. Like early on in the game, you can get this like remote control spaceship that you can send after enemies and stuff. The music is absolutely fantastic. There's another rare game on the Game Boy called Tailgater, which had the same composer. It's just got this really interesting sound to it that I really don't think has been replicated in any other game that I can think of. There are also some really interesting mechanics in it with being able to reverse gravity, and I feel like it's a really, really ambitious game that really doesn't get its flowers because a lot of people just didn't know it existed at all. So again, it's an expensive game, but there are ways to play this, and I would highly recommend checking it out because this is one that I think that a lot of people overlooked, and that's an absolute shame. Now, longtime viewers of the channel know I cannot pass up an opportunity when I'm talking about Hanna-Barbera games to talk about my personal favorite Hanna-Barbera game, and also what was one time one of my absolute top holy grails, and that is Wacky Races. Now, I made a video on this, probably 3 or 4 years ago, on when I picked this up and kind of how I did it. I also featured this game in my Buy More Ugly Games video, which a lot of people really seem to appreciate. So if you haven't seen that one, check it out because I kind of went over my collecting philosophy and how I go about trying to buy games. You can see this was a Blockbuster copy. I love getting games that have a story to tell, and this one has a ripped label and it has the Blockbuster big value pre-owned sticker on it and everything like that. I love getting games like this, but that's not really the point of this video, right? I want to talk about Wacky Races itself, and a lot of people have not played this game. This is another one that's really expensive if you were to try to just go out and pick it up at a convention or whatever. My story with this, I played it when I was a kid once. I rented it once and absolutely loved it. Next time I went back, they had already liquidated it and sold it, and I never saw it again until a few years ago when I was able to pick it up. It actually stars a villain, which I thought was kind of a cool concept at the time. It stars Muttley and Dick Dastardly, which if you're familiar with Wacky Races, they're not the good guys, they're the villains. And they're going through trying to sabotage the other racers. So the other racers that are the good guys are actually the bosses. There's also a switching weapons system where you can actually upgrade your weapons, and you can upgrade to have flight and other things as you play, which I thought was a really, really interesting and neat mechanic for an NES game. It's just an extremely polished package. Again, the music is great, the graphics are great. If you have not played Wacky Races, it is a nice, breezy playthrough. It's just fun the whole way through, and it's absolutely worth checking out. So if you can find a way to do it, it'll totally be worth your time. Now, we talked about Batman earlier, and we had Batman the Animated Series and some things like that, so everybody was kind of familiar with Batman. But when it came to Marvel, you had the Spider-Man Saturday morning cartoon and a couple of other, cartoons that were kind of mildly popular, but most of the time superheroes were relegated to comics and people that really knew comics and those sorts of things. They were cool, but they weren't quite as mainstream as they are with something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe we have today. Now, that said, there were some adaptations of superhero stuff on the NES. Now, we got a lot of them on the Super Nintendo, but there were several on the NES. We talked about one of those last week, Superman, which was a terrible game. But another one that is not a terrible game is Captain America and the Avengers. Now, this is a Data East game, and I think that might be the reason why a lot of people don't know it, because Data East is known for Joe and Mac, or Bad Dudes, or there's some other ones that are big heavy hitter original IPs that Data East owns. This is a licensed game, and Data East didn't do a ton of licensed games, but I gotta tell you, Captain America and the Avengers is one of the best superhero games on the NES that literally no one knows about. I do not have any idea why nobody knows about this game. You can control either Captain America or you can control Hawkeye. It's got Vision and Iron Man on the cover, but unfortunately you can't control them. They got captured. Although there is a two-player like one-on-one fighting mode, and you can control them there. And they can both fly, so I think that probably just broke the game too much, and that's why they didn't have them in the single-player experience. But it's got a little bit of that kind of Bionic Commando, choose where you go DNA to it as well, which I think is super interesting. And then it's got upgrades, like you can upgrade your characters by collecting power-ups and all those other things. And I think it's so strange that nobody knows about this one, because it is one of my absolute favorite games from childhood, and I loved it. Like, I played this game constantly. I don't think I even ever beat it as a kid, but I would just go back to it over and over and over again. So Captain America and the Avengers, if you have not played this game, if you did not know this game existed, now you do. Now you have no excuse. It's not that expensive, but it's like a $30, $40 game, something like that. And if you can, totally go pick it up, or again, find another way to play it. You won't be disappointed. And so that's it for my list of licensed NES games that you may or may not have heard of. Hopefully you found something in here that you like, or something that you didn't know about before. If you have something that I missed, I mean, there are a bunch of licensed NES games, right? Put it down in the comments below. It could be that I've never played it, or it could be that it's just one of those ones that I just decided not to include for this video. If this is a topic that you guys like, let me know. I can always do a worst licensed titles on the NES, because oh my gosh, if there are 10 good licensed titles, and there are more than that, then there are 50 bad licensed titles for the NES. So that is no problem. If you guys want another video on this topic, just let me know down in the comments. And on that note, please like, comment, and subscribe. Again, we're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers here pretty soon, trying to really ramp up the channel and try to get more content out there for you guys. So if you subscribe, that really, really helps me out, and we can get more stuff up here so that you guys can see it. So until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time.